All right, good. What is it? Morning, afternoon, evening. We're live. Today is 12 o'clock Eastern. We want to welcome you. We meet here every single Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern. My name is Raymond Johnson, and I want to welcome you again. Look, we've got a very special show that is lined up for you today. Today, we're talking about how to become a cautious team player. We're not talking about just a regular team player. We're talking about how to be a cautious team player. And I've got a special guest that we're going to bring on just in one moment. We're going to talk and hear a little bit more about him. But let me go ahead and give you my introduction of him. He is a highly cautious and a highly stabilizing individual, right? He is what I call the ultimate secret weapon, or the secret weapon to any particular team. You know that we talk about on a weekly basis in one way or another how to build your team. We also talk about how to make sure you keep it from destroying itself. And so that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to do it in the context of making sure that you have someone who is a team player who is on your team, but not just a team player, but someone who is a cautious team player. So let me go ahead and break that down. As you know, we talk about the disc on this show on a regular basis. We talk about the values, which show our motivators and why we do what we do. And we also talk about the attributes, which help us to understand how you think and make decisions based on the things in your external environment and also on your internal environment, you on the inside, how you think and process and make decisions. And so when we talk about the disc, we've already talked about how to be decisive, and you can go back and look at that old show. We've talked about how to be more interactive. That was a good show. We talked about that. You can go back and look at that one. And we've even talked about how to become more of a cautious individual. But today, what we're focusing on is we're coming back to that S that's stabilizing, the green portion in your profile, and we're combining it with the cautious, the blue part, simply because our guest is both of those. Now, look, when you have someone who is highly a stabilizing individual, that's the green part, that high S. They are the secret weapon. They know how to get stuff done. They know how to do it right. They know how to do it right the first time. They know how to think about things to mitigate the problems before they happen. Let me give you a story. So my son, he's a high C and a high S, right? But his high S, boy, that thing is genius. Let me show you how it's a genius. So one day this past summer, my daughter and I are watering the grass. We've got the whole yard sodded, resodded, front, back, sides, everything, brand new sod. So as you know, when you've got new sod or grass, that's the little strips for y'all who ain't landscapers, right? You've got to water it tremendously to make sure that it takes. So we're watering it and we're measuring it, and my daughter and I, we're having a good time. We're playing in the water while we're supposed to be watering it. I'm wetting her, she's wetting me, and we're trying to run and beat it before it gets to the house. And I see my son in the door, and he's going like this, and he's calculating where the water is going. He's calculating, and he's looking at where we need to be so that we cannot get wet. Now, he don't understand that we don't mind getting wet. We're having fun. But he realizes that even though we don't mind getting wet, he sees us trying not to get wet, and he's got the answer about how to do it. Well, a high S person, our guest, is just like that. He can calculate what to do to make sure your team is where it needs to be, and how to get it done, and making sure it's done right the first time. But he's also highly cautious. He's highly cautious, meaning he values procedures, protocols, and he knows how to follow the book, and not just follow the book, but he knows how to work outside of the normal rules, and he knows how to make adjustments in order to get it done. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest. Our guest is none other than Dr. Reginald Vance Cooper Jr. Reggie, thank you for joining us, man. Let me let you go ahead and greet your audience, because I know you've got people who are watching as well. Say something to our people, and then after you do that, tell us what it is that you do. Tell us what it is you do. We see that you help leaders understand the unique needs of their followers, but tell us what you do, because we also know you have another company that you're a part of where you're able to exercise your superpowers of being a high S and a high C. So just go ahead and say something and let us know what it is that you do.
How you doing, brother Ray? First off, I want to thank you for inviting me today to have this discussion with you. It's greatly appreciated. I know that I'm just here to provide value to everybody that's here to tune in. So as you said, my company is Access Purpose. Access Purpose, we actually do marketing, branding, and leadership development for businesses. So what we do is primarily looking at what we're doing is we're trying to gather all the information about our company. So what we do is we go through an assessment process with all of our clients, look to see what they're doing, what some of their strengths are, what some of their limitations are, and then based on who they want to be as an organization and the image that they want to project about themselves to the marketplace, we're able to formulate different campaigns around that. So we're kind of more of a unique company. So we're doing live events. We're not just doing we are able to do like digital advertising and campaigns like that, but our primary focus has been being able to get our audiences, get them projected into their communities so that people know who they are and what types of programs they're offering, and then also helping them facilitate events that are based on that are helping them reach their target audiences as well.
I love that. I love that. Listen, if you're watching via LinkedIn, you can connect with Reggie. You see his name up here. Type it in just like you see it there. Reginald Vance Cooper Jr., PhD, MHA. That's the boss right there. Look, we go ahead and you can link with him on LinkedIn. But listen, so Reggie, let's go ahead and get into this because we've been talking about how to get together for months now, longer than I care to remember, right? So we've been talking about how to do this. So maybe what you could do to start us off, the audience heard how I approach the concept of being a high S and a high C. In your words, would you tell us what exactly is a high stabilizing individual, a highly cautious individual? In your own words, tell us a little bit about that.
So what I would say specifically about the high S, when I think of high S, really those are people who are very concerned with stability. They're people who tend to have, they think very logically. These are people who want documentation and hard facts before they're making a decision about anything. They have a tendency to be more risk averse without some sort of proven process in order for things to take place. Then there are also high S's are also people that kind of avoid confrontation. So they have like a calmness and a peaceful sense among them. They're also individuals that have a tendency to want to accommodate others. Now, when I think of the high C's, there's many similarities and I guess parallels between high S's and high C's because I look at both of them as logical thinkers as well. I think that the C's have a tendency to really seek that data a little bit more, and they need they need to actually know what the process is, and they're cautious if there hasn't been a proven process or like a proven blueprint in place. They have a tendency to be a little bit cautious before they're able to adapt to a new philosophy or a new way of doing things. And they both of these individuals also they just have tendencies to avoid conflicts. Very non-confrontational types of individuals, but at the same time, can be very much about the people and getting things done.
Yo, man, I like how you put that. So when we for our audience, when we're talking about having a team, excuse me, we're talking about having a team. Um, Listen to what he said. They're not confrontational. That high C is going to seek data a little bit more, right? And that high S values the team and the relationships and getting things done correctly the first time. So listen, if you've got a situation that you have to deal with that requires, let's say, for example, disruption in the organization, disruption meaning change, then you might need a highly cautious individual and a highly S individual or individuals to go ahead and to massage that process and to be on the working side of it. Now, we talked about the high I. You need a high I to be the face of it because, listen, when you're dealing with change, you need somebody who's likable. You right? And that high C is quiet and reserved to themselves, right? That high S is quiet and kind of reserved to themselves. So they're misunderstood. Is that right? They're misunderstood. So if they're misunderstood, then you need that I to be the face, to be the voice. But behind the scenes, who's really getting it done, who's doing the work, you need that high C and that high S individual to make sure it's done correctly. Is that a fair assumption?
No, that's a completely fair assumption. Like you said, one thing about change is that change is constant. It's always going to happen, and that's whether it's good or bad.
Yep.
Change is change. So when you need that, especially when it comes to like when you want to try to really, so that high C, that high S, that's the person who's going to be able to help you more so manage that change. Because while change is always going to happen, if you change in too slowly, sometimes that can cause issues, and if you're changing too fast, that could also cause issues. So you need somebody that's able to kind of sit back, assess the situation as a whole, look at the advantages, look at the disadvantages, and then make a decision based on what the information you have at hand is.
I like that. I like that. That's good. So Reggie, tell me this, man. How would a high C? I'm sorry. Yes, a high C or a high S. How would they know if they're actually in an environment where they thrive? You know what I mean? How would they know if they're in an environment? Because we talked about burnout on this show before, and sometimes if you're not in the right environment, it can burn you out. You're just working. It can drain the life out of you. So help us understand, how will a person, and for our audience, 80% of you watching, 80% of the people who are watching this are high S's, or have some sort of tendencies of it. So for our audience, help us understand, how in the world can they know that they're in an environment where they're thriving, number one, and number two, how can they get to a point where they can thrive? So let's start with the first one. How do they know they're in an environment that they're thriving? And then number two, how can they get an environment where they are thriving if they're not already?
Well, I think one of the things about S's, I think S's have a tendency to thrive behind the scenes. That's not to say that S's are not capable of taking that being at the forefront, because they are. But the preference with S's is usually kind of thriving behind the scenes, really enjoying teamwork. Just if S's thrive when they're able to collaborate with a team. That's probably the key word, collaboration, for high S's. Like although they can. Sometimes they are, not sometimes, but they do have an ability to be able to take on multiple projects at the same time, and they're good multitasker. But really, S's, I think one of the deficiencies with S's is that sometimes that they have a tendency to want to do everything at one time. So that's probably one of the limitations. So being able to be in an environment where there's a team, where especially as an S, where you're able to understand what everyone's strength is and being able to delegate those responsibilities, I think that's an ideal situation for an S. Just being a part of that team, having a team that's able to recognize what their roles are, what their strengths are, what their limitations are, and having somebody be able to kind of coach them through that and just kind of delegate that stuff. That's really where an S is going to thrive, because they enjoy that teamwork element, but then they also enjoy being able to accommodate others and serving others. So look for S's as those people who are really going to, no matter what the process is or what the actual the goal is, they're making sure that the people are at the forefront. So service is definitely at the forefront of people who have that high S. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to C's, what I would say is C's also, these are people who also tend to not really be at the forefront, but they're very much focused on process. So C's, really, these people are, what I would say is they're the best at, these are the individuals you want when it comes to quality control. So if you have a project that is really dependent upon, where the success is dependent upon the details, being paid close attention to details, being paid attention to. You really want that C to be on the team because they're the people who are going to be seeking all the data. These are the people who are going to really just kind of they have a tendency to want to be accurate, especially the first time. They just want to be right. So they're going to be able to look through everything with a fine-tooth comb just to kind of make sure that everything is right before you actually make that final decision. And they have a tendency to also they like to contemplate on things because they like facing challenging problems because they like solving products. They really like to analyze things to be able to come up with the best solution. And again, I'll emphasize they want to have that best solution the first time.
That's so true. That's so true. You said something that got me to thinking. And you said that when you're talking about the S, sometimes they need to be coached through the process. And I want us to make sure that we kind of develop that idea so that our audience has the right idea of what that really looks like and what it means before we get to the second part of the question that we asked, which was how can we get in an environment that we're energized. And so let's kind of divert a little bit. What does it mean for an S to be coached, and why do they need the coaching? What is going through their mind when it comes to that? Because when people hear me say that, oh, they're the secret weapon, they know how to get it done. They're like, oh, I got to coach you. I just do it. I want to make sure that we dispel that myth. So what does it mean that high S may need to be coached through something?
Yeah, so especially and I'm looking at myself kind of as some of the things that I need when I go to coaching and look for mentorship. Probably the biggest thing I would say S's suffer from is that they have a tendency to overanalyze things to the point where it can be difficult to make a decision. So S's and again, there are many parallels between S's and C's, but S's, they like to think logically as well. So they want a lot of documentation. They want facts. They want to be able to look through all the information. They don't like to rush through things. But as we know, in a real world, in a real organization situation, sometimes you don't have that luxury to be able to take all the time you need to make a decision. So I think that S's one of their limitations at times, if you're not consciously aware of it, can be you're looking for so much information, trying to get so many details that you can't even really end up making a decision. So one of the things that I get coaching on is the process of being able to make decisions, especially quick decisions. So really when I look at making quick decisions, really simply put, without going into a long drawn out answer, is you're limiting your options. So really you're looking at all the information as quickly as possible, and then you have to really just knowing that you're a person who thinks logically, wants to go through all the documentation and all the processes. You might not have that luxury, so you have to make a quick decision. And if you don't make that quick decision, a person who is a high S and who's consciously aware that they have difficulty making those quick decisions, they'll have a person on their team that's capable of making those decisions for them.
Come on now. I like that. So look, man, you hit that right on the head. I kind of like look at it like, now I'm not a high S. I'm a high C, high D, high I. But my S is low. Now, for those of you who've taken the profile or who will be taking it, high doesn't mean good and low doesn't mean bad. It's just measuring where you are. So when I say I'm a low S, what that means for me, and especially for my S, is I move very fast on my S. That doesn't even count the other parts. And so what I have found with all of my S's who are friends of mine, they just want to get it right. And so when they need to be coached, it's because they want the assurance that they're doing it correctly. That's it. They just want to do it right. Because guess what? You spend more energy fixing it than you do if you would have done it right the first time. Now, Reggie, I'm about to mess myself up. I'm a high D. Primarily, I don't mind mistakes. I can fix the mistakes. I can figure it out as I go. That is my gift, right? But the reason why I need a high S on my team is because there's some mistakes that are just too costly and that you cannot afford to make. And so you've got to make sure you steer clear of that, which is why you need a high C, but you also need that high S to stop you, make the D's pump their brakes, say slow down. And so
Very
me
true.
being a high D who's also a low S, I move fast in my D and even faster because of my low S. So S's need that coaching because they just want to get it right. So what I have done, and you tell me how, if this is your experience, if those who are on my team who are high S's know that they've got to do something, I make sure I over communicate. Like I tell you 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways over and over and over, patiently and respectfully, that this is what we got to do to reassure. What does that do for someone who's a high S when they get that type of over communication?
No, but that's really the key. It's just about, since they are logical thinkers, they want to get it right, and they don't want to do a bunch of work just for it to be end up being wrong.
Yeah.
So really, you need to have someone that is able to just kind of be respectful to the fact that you might know exactly how the thing is, how that process, what the process is, and how whatever the task is supposed to be done. But then at the same time, you might reach out to your supervisor, the person who's in head, and be like, hey, can you check this real quick just to make sure I did this right? Even though you know that it's right, it's still important for us to have that assurance that it's right. So before we move it on to the next thing, because again, like you said, there's some things that just have to be done correctly the first time, because if not, it could be a costly mistake. So you're trying to avoid that just by getting that reassurance that the task is being done correctly.
I love that, man. That's cool. So tell me this: if you're a high S or a high C and you're not in an environment that is energizing, where your gifts can shine, how can a person, what steps can they take in order to get in an environment where they do thrive? Talk to me about that.
Well, I would say if you're not in an environment, the first thing I would say is that first thing you probably have to ask yourself is, are you in an environment that's really team oriented, or are you in an environment where you're kind of working by yourself, or where there's kind of conflict in the environment? Because if it's a confrontational environment, or people are not if they don't feel like they're being heard, especially if they don't feel like they're being asked for their opinion, that can cause a little bit of friction or within the high S. Sometimes with high S's, since they are a lot more reserved, sometimes they have a tendency to be quiet, and they might have lots of good ideas, but since they have that tendency to be kind of real laid back and they don't want to rock the boat, quote unquote, sometimes they might not even share their ideas, even though they have great ideas to be shared. So at times when kind of like when you're in the classroom and the teacher says, well, I'm going to pick on somebody who hasn't raised their hand. Yet sometimes you have to kind of do that with a high S, where if you've noticed that you're in a meeting, this person hasn't said anything the entire time, you might just have to pick on them and ask them, like, well, what do you think? And sometimes that's really what you have to do for an S, because if you're in an environment where you feel like people aren't asking you for your opinion on it, sometimes that can cause you to you could get a little bit passive aggressive at times, because it's like, I have these ideas and I know that what you're doing is wrong, but you haven't asked me yet.
Right.
Versus just opening your mouth. And again, it's just one of those things that if you're not consciously aware that it's going on, you don't even really recognize that that's the situation.
Man, look,
so that's what I would say.
I like that, and I like on my team, I need people who are gonna tell me I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I need people. Now, for some of y'all who are on my team, y'all know who y'all are. You know what I'm talking about, right? But I need somebody who will say, no, we got to look out for this. And in fact, I've been a part of teams where it took time to massage the process. And I finally got people to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Because they look at me and they say, well, you the boss, you the leader, or you the pastor. So, you tell us what to do. I'm like, man, no, you tell me what you think. because I'm only one side of the coin. You guys have been here. And so what do you think?
Right.
Tell me. In fact, I've got people on my team who I readily ask questions to because I value their opinion, they're trustworthy, they're accurate, and I know where their heart is. They really care. I got to be careful about other people. So I like what you said, that sometimes it could be kind of passive aggressive unless you speak out. You've got to purposely, if you're a leader, you're a CEO, you're a VP, or whatever you are, and you're watching this, you may have to listen to what Vance is saying. I'm saying Vance because that's my dude, right? But this is Dr. Cooper, right? But you may have to ask and pay attention to what he's saying and look at your team, and you may have to ask them. You may have to call on somebody who's not saying anything in order to find the answer, and I think that is worth it. So Vance, tell me this, as we getting ready to wrap up. So we've in this situation. Tell me what a high C and a high S brings to the workplace, and we've touched on it, but let's kind of hone in on that. What do they actually bring to the workplace? And then I want to look at your strengths. What do they actually bring to the workplace?
So I would say, especially for that, for the C, again, this is a person who actually prefers to be in a team-oriented environment. So if they're in a group where there's a good collaboration, people are asking questions, people are kind of bouncing ideas off each other, that's really the environment that a high C kind of prefers to be in. The next thing I would say is you want to have one of these people on the team because these are people who you have to have somebody that is coming to the table with some sense of logic, because while having great ideas is very good, you have to have, at some point you have to kind of balance those ideas out with logic. So what's the process going to be? How are we going to do this? Making sure that you're asking the right questions. So if you have somebody who's a high C, a high S, since they are, especially with the C's, since they are people who like to have a tendency to like to get into a routine and like to have like a structured process in place, these are people who are going to, if you have a new idea, they're going to ask you all the questions that need to be asked in order to basically prove your idea or concept right, and prove that we actually need to be moving in this direction and doing that. I think that...
I'm sorry to stop you, bro. You got to say that again. That was powerful. Say that again. They will do what? They will ask you... Go ahead.
You want somebody that's going to have you... You want somebody that's going to ask you the questions that are going to be able to kind of validate that you're going into the right direction when there is going to be a change in process or a change in philosophy. Because that's really... The thing a lot of people, what gets people in trouble is that we might have a new idea, we might have a new direction we want to go in, we might have a good goal that we're going after, but are you asking yourself the right questions? Do you have somebody that's actually asking you the right questions, and objectively? Because we don't want somebody, we want somebody. Some people, sometimes it gets a little, some people get a little bit frustrated because they have somebody that's it kind of seems like they're challenging your idea or challenging what you're saying. And they might be challenging it, but sometimes that's a good thing, where you have to just kind of remove if it's somebody, I always have a thing that I say is that when it comes to feedback and critique, I have a thing, me and my business partner, we say, where you always have to consider the source. So if you have somebody that's on your team that you trust, that you know has your best interests at heart, that loves you, if they're asking you a question about something that you're considering, take your feelings out of it and just at least, it's not even saying that they're right, but at least consider it, because they might be asking a question that you might not have actually thought of. So you got to kind of you need somebody on your team that's going to be asking you those difficult questions to kind of challenge your thinking, just so you could kind of prove that what you're saying and what your idea is, you move just so that you're proving to the team and to yourself that you're actually going in the right direction. So that's what I would say the biggest benefit to having someone like that on your team is just kind of ask those challenging, tough questions that you might not be considering before you're making a change or implementing some sort of idea or strategy.
Man, that's golden right there. Look, that right there, you just gave them the blueprint, the cheat code to success. You need people who are going to ask questions so that you can make sure, like you said, that your idea is actually validated. You need the right questions asked in the right way. And I like what you said. You have to remove yourself from it
Hmm.
so that you don't take everything personal. It's just an idea that's on pen and paper. Let's analyze it
Right.
and critique it. You know.
Right, and even getting back to the whole purpose of why we've gotten together, just when we look at the disc, we've got to recognize that everybody's not going to think like you. Like we
Yeah.
naturally do not think the same way. So you have to ask questions in a ways that the other like that you got to consider the perspectives that are outside of your own. So if you're not considering perspectives outside of your own, you're not going to be able to ask yourself questions in a different way that might, and again, it's just a matter of asking yourself, like getting questions asked of you in ways that you did not think of them, because it might, like it's a way like you might not actually have thought of it in the first place. And so like again, you really need somebody that's able to not really even necessarily challenging your perspective, but I guess challenge is probably the word I want to use. That probably is the right word to use now that I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, just kind of challenge your way of thinking and challenging your perspective, because we all think differently. We don't share the same perspective, so it's just being aware of the way that other people are thinking and the way other people might perceive what you're trying to do or what you're trying to say.
Man, I like that. Look, that right there, that is golden. I wish I had more people like that on my team that would do that because you want to move forward, but too oftentimes people block the way, and they block the way because change is difficult. We get it, but it's like we can get so much further and be so much more happy if we actually ask questions and got our feelings out of it, you know,
Absolutely,
and dealt with that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest key, taking your feelings out of it.
Hmm.
Because all feedback, you might not like the answer, but if it's a person that you know and trust, you've got to just consider the fact that they're not really necessarily trying to offend you, they're trying to help you improve.
Yeah.
So you just really have to take your feelings out of it when it comes to critique and feedback. And sometimes, and then honestly, just kind of touching on that point, sometimes it could be difficult for an S and a C to be receptive to feedback or criticism because they're so focused on having the right answer. So it's like, especially when you're talking to a person who's so focused, they've done all this work, they're trying to get the answer right the first time, and you got to come back and tell them it's wrong. It's like, well, what do you mean it's wrong? Like, what did I
Right.
do incorrectly? And but if it's again just placing yourself, taking yourself out of the situation, just being objective, and just recognizing that everybody doesn't think the same way as me. So if somebody's asking me a question and it's somebody I know and trust, considering the source, it might 9 times out of 10, if it's somebody coming from somebody I know and trust, it's going to be a valid question. So just kind of keeping that at mind. So just being slow to be offended when
Yep.
people are kind of asking for another explanation, or if somebody's giving you criticism based on something you did wrong or something that you could just kind of have done a little bit better.
Man, I like that. Slow to be offended. Ooh, that's good. I like that. Slow to be offended. Look, Reggie, this was good, man. This was excellent. We will continue, not this conversation,
Absolutely.
but future conversations. We will definitely do that because, and for those of you who don't know, Reggie and I have come up with a whole list of things that we are going to share with you. And you'll hear about those momentarily. But I want to thank you for joining us on today. It's been an excellent time. And I know you've got some things to do, and I appreciate your time. You've carved some time out of your busy schedule to join us. So thank you for joining us, Reggie. We appreciate you much. Be blessed. Listen, today, as I mentioned, excuse me, as I mentioned before, we meet every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. You can always catch the replay. But we meet every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And what we want to do is we want to encourage you to make sure you make us a part of your week. Share this information and make sure that you go ahead and like the video, or you subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on LinkedIn, share it. If you're on Facebook, share it, like it. We appreciate you. Be blessed and have an awesome rest of your week.